Happy birthday, George Washington. George Washington is today 289 years old. America's first president was born on this day in Westmoreland, Virginia. George Washington has a claim to be, I think, one of the all-time greatest leaders ever in any society. Why? Well, first of all, he beat the Brits. He beat people like me. He was a phenomenally successful military general. He rallied the American rebel army at its low point, Valley Forge, and he went on to lead the colonial army to victory against the British. That surely is a claim to greatness. But you know what? I don't think that military strength is really the only measure of greatness. If it were, then surely some of the biggest tyrants in human history could claim to be great. No, I think George Washington was great not just because of his military prowess. He also laid the foundations of the American Republic. He was one of that handful of people in that old courthouse in Philadelphia who drafted the Constitution during the summer of 1787. Surely that is a claim to greatness. But of course there were other people, other founding fathers in that courthouse. So I think to measure his greatness, we have to look even beyond that. I think one of the true measures of George Washington's greatness was the fact that after he served 2 terms, he stood down, he relinquished power. He was rather like that Roman Cincinnatus who, having saved the Republic, returned to his farm. That's what George Washington did, and I think that marks him out as a man of greatness. But you know what? I think there's one final measure of George Washington's true genius, and it's this letter he wrote. This is a document not nearly as famous as the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, but to me it is the essence of America. It's a letter George Washington wrote in August 1790 to the Jewish community in Newport, and this is why I think he has a claim to be one of the greatest leaders in human history. He wrote that all possess alike a liberty of conscience. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of, as it were, by the indulgence of one class of people, that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. What Washington was saying is that you're not going to be tolerated, you're free. You're not going to be allowed to practice your religion and do what you want because we're going to permit it. You have an absolute right to do as you wish. You don't need the permission of the strong man like me to live your life according to your own values and your own religion. I think this was an extraordinary thing that he did. It marked out the early American Republic as being a community of self-governing communities. This is the essence of America's genius. Now, bear that in mind today, what we've got in Washington. In Washington today, we don't have politicians who reinforce the idea of the Republic as being a series of self-governing communities, people working out their own ethical and religious frameworks for themselves according to their own idea of morality. We have today, sadly, politicians who believe that it is their job to impose their morality, their cultural norms, and their cultural values on the rest of America. George Washington, I think, set the example of what an American president ought to do. How tragic for America that we sometimes produce leaders who aren't up to it. We produce leaders who try to impose their idea of virtue on the rest of us. I think America needs to rediscover that genius of the founding, that America should be a series of self-governing communities. Happy birthday, Mr. President. You founded a truly great republic. I hope we can all live up to it.